people who work in high-class restaurants and hotels. What is the most ridiculous, stereotypical, rich person thing you've ever experienced someone has done? I've met two celebrities through my various work experiences. Tim Allen requested that we close the small bakery that I worked at for him while he is dining there. We did. He didn't leave a tip. Later in my career I met Mario Batali, famous Food Network chef, and he was the most normal person ever. He took a class with us, and then proceeded to pay for everyone else's class that was in his group and bought lunch for the staff as well. I guess both are stereotypical rich person things, for vastly different reasons. I operated a premium chain restaurant in Canada. One day this Indian gentleman started coming in, at first by himself. On the first day he spent $200 on wine and tipped $1,000. The next day he did the same again. When we saw him the third time I had servers fighting over him. Anyway, one evening he got drank on wine and Brad the busboy made the mistake complimenting his watch. Mr. S takes off his tag and gives it to Brad. The next morning Mr. S comes back to get his car and asks if Brad is there. I say yes and go get him. Brad knows what's up and is removing the watch as he walks over to Mr. S. Mr. S says, "Brad, I'm really sorry I got drank last night and gave you my watch." Brad is chuckling as he is removing the watch and says it's no problem and he was just holding the watch until Mr. S returned. The next thing Mr. S said, "I could not believe, Brad, you don't understand, I'm sorry because it was very rude of me to give you a used gift," and at that moment Mr. S pulled out a box with a brand new Tag Heuer inside and handed it to Brad. I interviewed at a large hotel attached to a casino and while I was being shown around the front desk, a woman walked up, said nothing, and got room keys after being greeted by the front desk agent. She immediately turned and walked away. Then the manager who was interviewing turned to me and said, "That's Mrs. Rich Lady Pants. You never ask her for her name, her ID, or God forbid a credit card. She stays here comped once or twice a week because her husband spends so much in the casino. If you upset her she will yell at you and then hand the person working next to you a $100 bill just to spite you." I ended up turning down a job there, thankfully so because apparently she wasn't the only guest of her type there. I worked for a resort in the Seychelles for 4 years. I have hundreds of stories which would fit this post, but one that stands out was a very wealthy Canadian family who stayed at one of the private residences for a couple of weeks. They brought their own staff including 2 personal chefs but also asked for a hotel chef to assist their team with prep and local ingredient knowledge. A chef I was friendly with was selected to spend the 2 weeks with them. One day, another member of the staff came down to one of the restaurants and purchased 2 bottles of wine for €11,000 plus each. Now we had far more expensive bottles on the list, but this was still a notable sale, and later that night, I asked my mate what they had cooked to accompany the wine. Turns out they had poured both bottles into the pot while making a coq au vin. I used to work at a ski resort that sits at the top of a steep canyon. The geography is pretty extreme and people don't want to drive through the snow, so everyone with enough money stays directly at the resort. Our rooms generally weren't over the top luxurious, but we had probably the 2nd or 3rd nicest hotel in the resort area and saw some rich clientele. One time someone in sales or reservations screwed up with a conference which caused the significantly larger and more 5-star luxury style place up the hill to become oversold. So naturally they bumped some of them down to our hotel. Normally this isn't a big deal. We'd comp them enough stuff like free spa passes at the 5* place and a meal and they'd be happy. They're coming for some random conference that sold a huge block of rooms. They probably didn't even know what hotel they were at or what type of room they were in. As someone who works at a higher-end hotel you get really sensitive to people's body languages and you can tell when people are grumpy. Normally they're just tired from a long trip or mad at the spouse or something and it has nothing to do with you, but you can see it 100 yards away. This guy walked through the door and was broadcasting his attitude like there was a giant lighthouse light strapped on his head. Not only was he mad, but he kept making eye contact with me to let me know he was mad about the move and mad that he had to wait in line to check in. I knew when he walked up that he was going to go off. He gave me the typically non-Swifty attitude interrogation. "What's going on? Why did this happen? Are you incompetent? Yada yada." It was really unpleasant, but I'm a pro. I was doing pretty good at the hospitality verbal kung fu and not giving him anything to be mad at me about. He started asking about the amenities of the hotel, looking for an opening. "Do you have a pool?" "Yes, sir, we do." "Here's your key." "Do you have a restaurant?" "Yes, sir. It's really fantastic. Here's a voucher for a meal on us." Would you like me to make you a reservation? Do you have a spa? Yes. We have steam rooms, sauna, and a masseuse on contract. We also would be happy to take you to the 5* spa at any time. Here's the number for our valet driver. What time would you prefer your appointment? It's also worth nothing that we're like 100 yards away from the other building. We even had 24-hour valet to come pick them up and drive them around literally on call if they didn't want to walk through the snow. We have a better restaurant than the 5* place at normal prices, a nice gym, nice pool, the whole 9 yards. This was a wipe your butt if you ask nice kind of hospitality environment that most people really enjoyed. He couldn't really find anything to complain about, but he was still interrogating me. Then he asked me about the ski lockers. Do you have ski lockers? Yes, sir. The ski locker is on the first floor, just across the walkway from the tram center, so you can unload without having to walk up any stairs. The locker number is just your room number. Here's your combination. Do you have boot warmers? No, sir. We do not. He'd finally found something to go off about. The dude threw his head back and let out a big, "Ooh, you don't have boot warmers." What kind of place doesn't even have boot warmers in the locker room? You expect me to put on my skis when they're frozen cold in the morning? What am I supposed to do, put them in my room where they'll get all smelly? Dude proceeded to unleash on me for a good 3 or 4 minutes all the pent-up rage he'd been building for the last hour or so, except his target was how ridiculous it was that we didn't have electric boot warmers in his private ski locker at the luxury hotel. I worked in high-end hospitality for 10 years, and probably the second worst butt-chewing I ever received from a customer was over our lack of fricking boot warmers. There's a thing in Stockholm's rich kid district called Vaska. Basically, you order an expensive bottle of champagne, pay for it and watch how the waiter wastes all of it by pouring it down the drain. Some places let you do it yourself. Sadly, it's an established thing in these kind of circles, like, it's on the menu cards and all that. Honestly, the dumbest way of flexing I've ever witnessed. Weird flex and not okay. I don't even work at that nice of a restaurant, but last month I got chewed out over the phone because some lady left her baby's actual silver spoon on the table, and we didn't know where it was, so obviously one of us had stolen it. Here's a crazy good counterpart to your story. My family used to dine regularly at what, I guess, is an upscale French restaurant. Marvelous food. We became regulars because the staff were all so friendly. This included everyone from the owner, the greeting staff, table assistants, bartender, and every single one of the cooks from the newest line cook to the head chefs. Anyway, one of the first 4 to 5 visits in, we asked if they made bananas Foster. They did not. No problem, we said, and ordered off the menu as listed. A few minutes later, the big chef took a moment to come speak with us. We don't have enough people asking for that, so we don't keep on hand the liqueur. However, if you'd like to bring your own bottle in next time, we'll store it for you. Just give us a call and let us know so we can have someone go buy the bananas before you come in. I was floored. And we did so. We usually ordered the bananas Foster as dessert and it was amazing. They had to cook it in the kitchen, not having the right tableside set up. But it was an incredible experience. Another time, 6 months or so later, we were eating at the same place. My son, age 9 or so, lost 2 parts of his Gundam. I can't recall which model, but it was his favorite then. We searched everywhere we could and didn't locate either part. So, we asked the wait staff to keep an eye out and gave them our phone number. The next afternoon, I got a call. The night staff, when they closed, had moved all the tables and chairs, including some pretty hefty seating for parties of 6 to 8 that were nearby. They actually located one part. Then, when the morning crew came in and had better lighting, they did the same. And located the second missing part. I thanked them after I made reservations for that same night. Both to express my gratitude and to retrieve the toy parts. No Gundams or toys were allowed again, except for one. Game Boy. My son also was going through a weird phase where he didn't care for steak and was an all-around picky eater. I asked for a burger for him, but they didn't carry ground beef. I asked for alternatives and the chef came out again. The solution was that he chopped and ground a freaking filet mignon into ground mignon and turned that into a burger. Which my son claimed was the best he ever had. This was 20 years ago and the memories are still so profoundly good. I still give my son stuff about a couple of these things, in good humor. And he sees the humor, too. Your silver spoon story brought all this to mind. Sorry for the length on this, but it was great to relive these events. Thanks for that. Worked at a private villa in Bali. One guest stood out. She only drinks and bathes in Evian, so one day I spent almost an hour filling a large tub from tons of Evian bottles. The same young woman complained that the path from her villa gate to her room wasn't well lit. She wore sunglasses at night. So on Amazon, a 12 case of Evian is a refreshing $249.71. Not a food worker myself, but there's a Long Island chef named Tom Schaudel that puts out a yearly top 10 of crazy, spoiled, or just downright insane customers he had that year. Always a good read. Here's an example. The link to the article is in the description of this video, friends. I'm none of the above, but a soldier. We held an annual ball at a local marina hotel restaurant per bar, and had it reserved for the evening. Barkeep Post grabs our commander a few hours into the event and says, "There's a guy, he's a daily regular for the past 15 years, wants to grab his usual nightcap. Do you mind?" The commander agrees and the gentleman comes in, sits at his spot, and proceeds to enjoy the show while, occasionally, covering costs for those of us grabbing drinks, in exchange for a little small talk about what we do. After about 3 hours, he grabs his coat and heads out. He then returns about an hour later, and proceeds to shut down the joint with us, still covering drinks, here and there. The next day when I came in as part of the cleanup crew, grabbing drankly abandoned uniform or materials, the host gave me the breakdown after I asked how long the charges normally take to process, as I hadn't seen my bar tab hit my account yet. Turns out the regular owned a chunk of the marina, and covered a combined $12,000 bar tab as, thanks to the servicemen and women, I had a tab of over $450 waiting on my card, completely covered that night. It was glorious. My former boss, insanely wealthy, used to stay in presidential suites and would have any and all red removed. He was a high roller at several casinos and they made special chips just for him as a substitute to red chips. He hated the color red because when you're losing money, you're in the red. Ha 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 he 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 ha. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to Reddit Said It. Or don't. I'm not your boss.